Ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to another special episode of Nintendo Talk. I am Bobby, the Nintendo Guru, joined by newly acquired good friend of mine, Lloyd Hanneson of the Nintendo Pulse podcast. What is up, sir? How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome, dude. It's post E3. The kind of E3 hangover is kind of gone, and I'm actually playing some games. I'm playing some Final Fantasy 12, getting in some stuff going. It's been good, man. It's been a lot of fun, and thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, you're welcome, man. Real quickly, before we jump into all the craziness that's about to happen, all the nonsense we're going to talk about, let people know where they can find you at and all that good stuff.
For sure, yeah. If you want to contact me, I'm on Twitter at Dasme, Dasme. You can just send me a message there. But I've been doing Nintendo Pulse for years and years and years, like 2006 or something. It started as DS Life, and then I started a show called Wii Spot, and then we merged them together. So now it's Nintendo Pulse, and you can find that over at my podcast network, which is RezTV, REZD.TV. And we do a bunch of shows, but mainly it's the Nintendo stuff. I'm a huge Nintendo fanboy.
I can't get away from Canadians. Whatever I try to do, you guys just have to ruin my life with Zeds and stuff.
It's fun. The first time I started calling that out on the podcast, like every comment on YouTube and on Twitter is like, it's Z, it's not Z, it's Z. I'm like, well, no, it's Z for one country, it's Z everywhere else in the world. So except for one other small country.
Listen,
but yeah, anyway.
Listen, we all know, if you listen to our president, we're the only country in the world. We're the only one that matters. You guys fall in line. You need to, we need to change the way you do your mathematics and all your other crazy stuff.
Get rid of degrees, Celsius, Get rid of metric, get all that junk out of here.
All this has got to go. We're going back old school. We're going to make it happen. Well, not old school, new school, I guess, in whatever craziness. So Lloyd, we're going to kick this episode off like we do each and every episode around here. But we're going to do your geek outs this time. So what are you excited about?
Well, I'm currently geeking out again to watching Lost on Amazon Prime streaming video. I was one of my favorite TV shows of all time back when it was airing. Not so much fan of the way it ended, but we'll forget about that. I'll just forget about the last season. But I forgot how much I loved the show, and I saw it on Amazon Prime, and I've just been loving it. Like, one of the best serialized television shows ever. It basically created a lot of the TV shows that are out there now with how they tell stories, storytelling, the special effects. It was like one of the first TV shows out there that had like an official podcast. And so I used to listen to that as well. And it's been amazing going back and listening to watching the original couple seasons of Lost. So much so that I think I want to get like a 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42 tattoo somewhere. I was like, I really love this show. I got to get those numbers somewhere so that I can find other lost heads out there.
What are you doing to yourself? So here's the thing. I was not a fan of Lost. I couldn't get into the whole thing. I thought this is Gilligan's Island 2.0. Just can't do it. But I know it was like a deeper meaning and all this stuff, and and I know who Damon Lindelof is. There was a time when I was listening to Sirius XM, Howard Stern. He actually had Ralph, and those guys had their own show on there, and it was kind of like a geeky, nerdy thing. They would do once a week, and Damon was friends with Ralph, and he would come on all the time. And I remember them discussing, like, after the show was done, he broke it down to like what the meaning was behind the final, episode and all this stuff, or at least they were throwing at him the theories, and he was kind of like directing a little bit, like this is kind of what it was, so I know that people weren't happy with it, but they also weren't expecting to go as long as they were to do. They only thought like 1 or 2 seasons and they were out, and the show was such a massive hit that they were like, we want to keep going. So, and I know Damon and them were kind of like, no, we won't do this.
it was crazy. Like there was an ARG running for some time there. People were there was message boards all over the internet. People are trying to come up with fan theories. And then the showrunners kind of said, nope, you're all wrong. This is what it is, and it sucks. So I kind of try to forget about that. I hope at one point it gets rebooted and they kind of just like retcon that whole last season and bring it somewhere else. But it's fantastic.
The same group of friends were also involved in Heroes at the same time. And that's the same thing. Like, first season, spectacular. And I really believe the second season would have been something really special, but the writer's strike happened. And they never seemed to get back on the track of what they created in that first season. Because that first season was, my God. I went back and started watching it a little while ago, and I'm like, dude, this was like TV perfection. Like, just had you roped in every single week. And just, anyway.
That's something we're never going to get back. Like, there was something about like network television. You would watch 7 o'clock on a Tuesday or 7 o'clock on a Friday. You would go into work the next day and you talk with your buddies and it's like, oh, did you see that? Yeah. What about this? You come up with fan theories. That is never going to happen anymore because everything is available on Netflix. You binge it. And maybe I binge 2 episodes. My buddy binges 4. We can't talk about the same things. It's that era of kind of our I don't know, our society is kind of gone. The whole shared experience stuff.
You're right. The coolest thing I ever heard was same thing I heard on the radio show they did on Stern Network was Ralph was talking to a guy who was a studio executive, and he said what him and his wife do is they actually go in at the beginning of like every fall. They build their own television network, and they go, okay, on Monday nights, like what they do is Monday through Friday, like from 6 to like 9, they build like their own, like, okay, from 6 to 7 we're going to watch this show, or from 7 to 8 on Monday. So and they don't divert, so it isn't like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They watch each show once a week, and they watch it just like a regular television series. So they don't know what happened. Like, I just literally got Karate Kid or Cobra Kai. I like 2 days done. Like, I don't like it's so like I'm waiting for Veronica Mars to start, and I'm like, that show's gonna be done. Like, I think it's tomorrow, actually, if I'm not mistaken, or next month. I forget which it is. But when that starts, I'll be done in a day. I'll have them all watch. I'm like, okay, now I gotta wait a year for this.
It's the only shared experience these days is sports. So if you follow a sports team, you have that conversation with your friends. But if you're into pretty much anything else, like it's gone. That part of I don't know, our culture is kind of gone. But I mean, there's pluses and minuses. The plus is being able to go back through 10 years later and rewatch Lost on Amazon Prime whenever I want. Like that's pretty awesome.
E3 is another thing, Lloyd. Like, that's the moment that like all the gaming nerds just focus in on that thing and that event, and that's it. And it's weird because there's other events that are bigger in the world than E3, but like it just feels like E3 is the mecca where everybody pays attention to, and all the companies come out and like strut their stuff, unless you're Sony, of course, and then you just don't show up.
Take your ball and go home.
Exactly. So what we've been doing here, for those that have been paying attention and those that are new to the show, we'll just explain this. We have been sitting down each day for the past 2 weeks now, talking to different podcasters, YouTubers, about what they want, what they hope, what they think, 5 things that should be in Breath of the Wild 2. This week we brought in Lloyd. So I'm curious, Lloyd, what is the first thing that you want to see come to Breath of the Wild 2?
All right. Well, let me start off with saying I absolutely adored Breath of the Wild. I love the game. I spent 140, 150 hours playing that game. I loved every single thing about it. 120 shrines, all the little, I don't know, little seed things. Korok I don't want to call. Yeah, I was going to call them something else, but yeah, Korok seeds. All those little things.
You didn't get all of them, did you?
No, I stopped at about 700. And I'm like, I can't do this. This is not fun. I don't want the golden Korok seed. I don't want that really that much. I loved everything about the game, the world, the environment. Everything was awesome. I missed having real dungeons, like actual puzzle dungeons. Like there was a lot of puzzles in the shrines,
Mm-hmm.
don't get me wrong, but there was something awesome about old Zelda games, and I'm all the way back from Super Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
I loved going through every Zelda game since that came out. I played the NES ones, but they're a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
And basically you go to a dungeon, you need an item to beat that dungeon and to beat the boss, and then you can use that item for the rest of the game. And I really miss that in Breath of the Wild. So if they can find some way to bring back, I don't know, a handful of real dungeons that give you your hook shot, your bomb shoes, your iron boots, your bow and arrow, things like that are kind of classic Zelda items,
Mm-hmm.
and lock them up in dungeons instead of just having shrines. I would just love that, because I really miss that with Breath of the Wild, as awesome as the game was and as much time as I spent in that game.
Okay, so this is where we get to have a little fun, Lloyd. We're going to break this apart a little bit because,
Cool.
First off, we want to still try to create the same open world, open vibe to this. So my first question to you is, how do the shrine, or how do these new dungeons get unlocked? Are they just there from the get-go? Do you have to do something? In your mind, what's the ideal way to open up the dungeons?
So I've been looking at that trailer a couple times, and at first, at the end of the trailer, I thought the castle was sinking into the ground, and I was like, oh, they're opening up an underworld. But then I watched it a few more times, and it actually looks like the castle's rising up.
Yeah.
And then you look at some of the trailer, and you see the hand that is holding down the dead body, which probably Ganon, but who knows, right?
Yeah.
And then eventually you see Link get that power in his sword hand,
Mhm.
and then that hand saves him later. So I'm thinking, what if a lot of these dungeons are in parts of the world that aren't accessible until you've come up with an item? So you need to unlock the power of the hand, whatever that hand is, to then use it to get yourself up to the Sky Islands, this floating dungeons. Maybe there'll be different different things that are protecting the outside of these dungeons that you have to kind of get something to be able to go there. Similar to past Zeldas, where you need specific boots or specific you'd be able to you have to make ice blocks to get to this thing, or you need to be able to burn a bush to get to this thing. If they could do something like that, but keep the continent the same, maybe break up some of the things, kind of like what Fortnite does, where you have the same basic map, but you kind of remix it a little bit and have dungeons in the air, have dungeons under the water. So you need your iron boots to go down there and walk around on the bottom of the ocean to get into these dungeons, and then maybe even some underworld stuff. They could keep the same world, keep the same sort of feel of Breath of the Wild, but have a calamity that breaks the world apart a little bit, and then is locked up by these dungeons.
So in theory, what if I'm following you correctly, you kind of feel like, okay, whatever happens to the world to make the trigger to make the evil come out, this kind of opens up these dungeons, and then whatever power Link gets, that is what unlocks to get into each particular dungeon. And you kind of want them all over the place, like as far as like in the sky, below ground, wherever it might be. Now, you have where we're collecting weapons in each dungeon, but what's the ultimate thing that you want to see them, like in past Zeldas, we either got like the pearls to unlock things in Link to the Past, and then we wound up getting Triforce pieces. So is it Triforce pieces? Is it something else? Like what is your go-to thing here?
Really good question. In Breath of the Wild, we had the Sheikah Slate, we had all the Sheikah runes. What I'm thinking is that this power, this whatever this hand is that is of sealing Ganon beneath the castle, that you absorb that power, you absorb that green power. You unlock different abilities that you can use that. So you have maybe you still have your runes, but then maybe you have other powers where you almost become like a little mini divine beast walking around, because you have some additional powers that are locked up in the magic that is going inside of your fist with whatever that new item is. If you get that item. But was looking at it, and it's really interesting, just with the coloration of, like, if you go back and you look at some of the past Zelda games, you had the Triforce, you had red, you had green, you had blue. In this game, you had red, which was like the Calamity from Ganon was kind of red purpley, and then you had blue, which was all of the Sheikah technology, and now you have green, and it's like, okay, well, maybe that's what this is. Maybe that is like the third part of this Triforce, and you are finally getting the ability to control some of this divine energy.
Interesting, very interesting. Okay, what is your second thing that you want to see?
So I touched on it a little bit with the kind of like getting up in the sky for dungeons and things like that. I had a lot of fun with the DLC with like the floating platforms and some of the other stuff that added. And I really hope that there is other things to explore that isn't just plains and desert and winter areas and ice scapes and things like that. Sky islands, undersea things. More places to explore that aren't just things that you can see on the map. A lot of like interior or underground or underwater. Just because if they're keeping the same map, and it kind of looks like they are from the trailer, they need to add stuff or remix what is there to kind of keep it interesting. After some people spent 1,000 hours in that game, so they need to keep it interesting for those people.
I think I'm definitely with you, because here's the thing. I put in 190 hours, I believe. Now, that wasn't all the original game, because I did spend a little bit of time, probably like 20 hours, messing with the DLC. I never finished the DLC. Well, I got to go back and do that. But that being said, I guess I agree with what you're saying in terms of, because like I look at A Link to the Past, and I spent so much time playing Link to the Past that when Link Between Worlds came out, it just felt so familiar to me that the changes weren't enough to throw me off, that I never felt nervous. Like when I first fired up Breath of the Wild, I legitimately was nervous when you get that pan and it shows the entire world. Like, it hit me like, holy crap, this place is massive. But by the end of the game, like, I no longer was scared. I no longer was nervous. And I want them to try to bring that feeling back. And I feel like the only way you can do that is, like you say, to remix the map, for lack of a better term. Because that's the thing. Like, when you play, for those who play Fortnite, you play that map, you know that map, you have that map down. And then all of a sudden, after the next season, it's changed. And there's enough areas that you still feel comfortable, but you do feel kind of out of sorts going into the newer areas.
That's right.
And I feel like that's something they need to do in this game, is to change it up just enough to make us go, wait a minute, I can't just rush into this area because I've never been here before. And the one thing I think by changing it up a little bit is make it, make some of the enemies different in the areas. Like, it felt like with Breath of the Wild, the enemies were very repetitive.
You had 5 types or whatever it was, and plus the mini boss type characters. You need more. You definitely need more things.
The bogoblins didn't scare me. The moblins didn't scare me. Like, none of that stuff worked. The guardians were the only thing that truly scared me. And like the first time, a Hinox scared me, but it was like, well, they got this gigantic eye on his forehead, I'm just gonna shoot it. And I was like, okay, that's it. That's what kills him, And so, other than a Lionel and a Guardian, like, I really wasn't ever nervous going into those areas. So that's what I want to. Don't get me wrong, that took a little bit. Like, the first little bit, I was just like, what is going on? Like, what do I do? Am I, But I want it to be, like you said, fresh and a remix to kind of make me like, okay, so maybe adding a sky would be kind of cool, like if there's something up in the cloud, because we know from Skyward Sword, like we know there's stuff in the sky in theory. So they could probably tinker with that a little bit and make it happen. But I would also think that if they kind of go to the bottom right-hand corner of the map and open that up a little bit, and we get into the sea, and maybe there's some islands out there to explore. Definitely a remix, though. I like exactly what you're saying with that.
Yeah. I agree with the enemies thing. Like the camps were really cool. Like being able to take over a camp and all that. But it's the same thing. It's like, okay, this is Lizalfo camp. This is a Bokoblin camp. Having more enemies and maybe different factions almost that are trying to vie for some control of the area would be really cool.
Yeah.
Because I had so much fun with games like Far Cry, where you have like the enemies in a base, and then you have animals that are roaming around, and you can kind of encourage them to battle each other.
Yeah.
Throwing some stuff in like that, with some added enemy types, some more varied enemies would be fantastic, because it didn't really get boring, but it was very samey. It's like, okay, another camp. Okay, I'll shoot this guy. I'll climb up there. I'll throw a fire arrow. I'll glide up to the top. I'll shoot a bomb. Like it became super samey near the end. But of course, you were a god by the end of the game. You could do almost everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, having some different enemies and some newer parts of the world that are very similar to older parts of the world, but remixed would be fantastic.
I think when I first started, there was a good portion. I would probably say the first, 10 to 15 hours, I was very, I don't want to say clumsy, but very not with it, in terms of, like, I'd go to a camp and I would die, and then I would be like, okay, that didn't work. How do I get in this time? And then, like, you would kind of, and I would like more of that, like longer spurts of that, because even though I felt like I was spending at times like a half an hour to 40 minutes on one camp, that made it more rewarding when I finally did take that camp down, because I was like, okay, there's more here. So they definitely got to do something with that. So I'm with you on there. What is number 3 for you?
Well, I think this is one that probably the most people have been talking about online, and I would love to see some form of co-op. The ability to go through the game online with my friend, or at least local co-op, would be fantastic. Or have an AI control partner. We've seen recently with a lot of games that had an AI partner that wasn't useless, like God of War on PlayStation 4. Kratos and his boy was fantastic, right?
Yeah.
They would do stuff, they would pick stuff up, and we kind of already had co-op with an AI controlled partner in Breath of the Wild. If you had the Wolflink amiibo, you would scan it, and it would kind of run around and do some things. But if they could flesh that out a little bit, it would make the I don't know, the world was very alone. There's vast distances between fights and cool areas in the world, but having someone that would sort of chat along with you or do things, find stuff, would be really cool. And then the ability to maybe have a buddy, as I said, online or local, pop in and control that character. I can just imagine going through the game with my daughter or my son. It would just be a fantastic experience. They loved watching me play it, but if they could play with me, or if I could play with them, it would be a much better experience.
In that situation, it seems like that makes sense, right? Because you could kind of protect them in areas, since they're kind of, you would think, novices, and they would struggle in areas, but it would also make them feel like, hey, I'm actually in this world with my dad, and I'm playing with him, at a nice little experience. So I'm guessing, or I'm assuming, you want to play as Link and Zelda in this particular situation.
Yep.
So let's take this a little bit deeper here, and let's open this up. So if it is, I guess in theory, what you're looking for is, if you play with somebody, you're playing together and you're doing your thing. Now, if you're single player, does that person disappear, or is that person always with you in your mind?
To me, I think the person would always be with you, similar to, like, I'm envisioning God of War, but in Zelda, where you have this character that is always there, always helping out, always calling out enemies. Never dying, like never any chance of that character dying and ruining your gameplay that way. But just there and doing stuff would be fantastic. Like if you were playing through the game, and an enemy comes over a hill and you don't see it, but your AI character calls out, "Hey, there's a Lizalfos coming," and you turn around. That'd be better than just being snuck up on, and then the music changes and then you kill the thing, right? It just, because the game was very alone and very stark and and almost like, I don't know, like desolate, even though there was a lot of places to go.
Yeah.
It wasn't it wasn't like your normal Zelda video game where every screen there's something cool to do,
Yeah.
which was part of its charm. Don't
Yeah.
get me wrong, but it would be nice if they could make it a less lonely place to go and spend 150 hours.
I was just talking because I literally just recorded just before this with someone else and show after work, one of my friends, and I was saying to him like I don't mind the idea of a co-op person with me at all times, but I would like the ability to just be like, go away.
Yeah.
I want to go up in the mountains and hunt. Because that's the one thing that I really enjoyed in Breath of the Wild was when I was solitude up in the mountains hunting and building up my inventories. Then we would go down and cook. So for me, I don't think I would mind the AI character with me just as long as it could be a situation where I could be like, okay, just for this little bit, I want to play alone. Because I think of like I was saying to him, like I think of like Last of Us when you're playing and there's Ellie like running around and it's like, get back here and hide. Like, what are you doing? And I feel like unless they can get it right, it would be real awkward to have like Zelda or Link running around as you're trying to hunt like a bird or a wolf, like a wolf, pack of wolf or whatever like that, and it's just like you'd want them to kind of be like, no, go away. Let me go do this by myself for a little bit. So that would be interesting. I like that. I do like that aspect of it. I mean, I guess we'll find out in the hopefully in the near future, but I think we're gonna find out what this is. And I know that Alnuma's kind of teased from talking to people about like the idea of playing as Zelda and the whole co-op thing. So I guess we'll find out what happens here very shortly. That was what, 3?
Yes.
Okay, so number 4.
My number 4 was kind of the pet peeve for a lot of people that played the original Breath of the Wild. I didn't mind it, but I could probably like it better if it wasn't there, and that was item durability. I loved what they were trying to do, get you to use different weapons and things like that. But if what I think is happening in the trailer, where you see that green swirling energy and then it goes into Link, I think what you're doing is you're collecting this divine energy that was sealing Ganon, and then you're using that to cast magic. This is the first Zelda game where your Master Sword ran out of energy. Well, maybe your Master Sword doesn't run out of energy anymore because you have the energy in your hand.
Yeah.
So maybe that is the change in this game, where there's a few different item classes. Maybe you get your swords, you get your pole arms, your axes, your halberds, your bows and arrows, different weapon classes, and you can pick one up and then you use it, and then if you don't want it anymore, this will go into what my number 5 is a little bit, but you can take that stuff and break it down. So you'd find other swords and you would just kind of turn them to dust, and you'd use it somewhere else, which I'll talk about for number 5.
Okay. It's funny because Bill wants the breakdown of weapons, and he was like, people are gonna hate me when I say this, but I want the breakdown of weapons. But when he explained it to me, it makes sense, and I think also in the course of Breath of the Wild, like it made sense to me when and that's what I basically kind of rebutted back to him, was it made sense to me like a rusty sword is going to break. It's not that good. A wooden sword is going to break. A branch will break. Like that's stuff that you expect to break and fall apart. But I don't expect the Master Sword to stop working midway through a battle. Yep. And I think that's where we have missed opportunities. I also don't expect the Hylian shield to break if I use it too much. Like these are items that we've been trained to expect. Now, the only thing that I could say is, well, maybe we didn't get the true Master Sword, or maybe because the Master Sword was locked away in the forest for 100 years, it's not up to snuff where it needs to be. But that, if you played Link to the Past, I played Link to the Past, like you go to the blacksmith and he puts a sheen on it and it makes it a stronger sword and takes it up a level. So for me, that would have been ideal with this. And the same thing with some other items is to make it where you can go to a blacksmith or you can do some things to upgrade items. Because we could, we could upgrade our armor, our clothes. Why couldn't we upgrade our weapons?
Yeah, it's 100%. And with the getting rid of item durability, I think the whole system around that would involve some sort of crafting, some sort of repair system. Yeah. So you're finding an iron sword, and your iron sword's kind of destroyed. So you don't just take the other one; you can then use that one to upgrade the one that you have, or repair the one that you have. Yeah. Like we could upgrade, as you said, all of our armor, but it looked exactly the same. Like it would be nice if there was some more crafting elements for weapons, turning the stuff that you're not using to dust, use that to upgrade things. That would be amazing. But not having to worry that the one bow that I love using to take on this particular enemy, I take a shot and it shatters, and it's like, okay, well, this just ruined the 15-minute climb up the hill that I took to go kill this thing. It caused parts of the game that weren't fun, which to me is always something that Nintendo is very against. They like every part of the game to be joyful and fun. And I loved some aspect of the destructible weapons because it does encourage you to do things differently. But I didn't like it by the end of the game. It was boring. Okay, well, I know where these weapons spawn. I wait for the next blood moon. I go pick up my favorites. All right, now I'm ready to take on all the Lionels and everything else that I want to do in this game.
Well, the other thing too is like you go up, right? You go to the Ritu, you beat that champion, you get and then you get that bow, and then that breaks, and it's like, what? Like
it's a legendary weapon.
Yeah, it's a legendary. Why is a legendary weapon? And then, by the way, you want to go get it fixed. It's insanely crazy to get it fixed, right? Yeah. So, okay, you get it fixed, and then it breaks again. And it's like, this is dumb. This is just, like, seriously. If I went and I bought a new Nintendo Switch, and it broke after, like, 5 uses, right? And then I took it back and got it fixed, and then it broke again after 5 uses, I'd be like, all right, look, this is garbage. Like, this is trash. I don't want this thing. So it would be nice if they would just... Certain weapons, I feel like, should never break. And if you want to make it where it's very difficult to get the Master Sword or these champion weapons, and fine, do that. That doesn't matter. Sure. But, like, make it that when you get these weapons, you actually feel like, hey, man, I have something. Because that's how I felt at first. And I was using the bow like crazy, and it broke, and I was like, what just happened? And then the best was when I went, I was having trouble with a certain enemy because my good weapons kept breaking. I was like, I need to go get the Master Sword, because the Master Sword is going to be the weapon, and it won't break. And surprise, it doesn't break, but it just goes out of power, and you can't use it. And it's like, you've got to be kidding me right now. Like, I just literally spent hours getting more hearts so I can go get this thing. I go get the thing, and I can't use it? Like, this isn't right.
So, I had the exact same experience, but for me, it was you sneak into the castle, you get the Hylian shield. It's like, all right, I'm safe now. I don't have to worry about anything. And then you block a couple lasers, and it shatters. It's like, all right, well, that was worth it. Great. I'm glad I spent so much time doing this.
Yeah. It's like... I mean, and that's part of, like we said before, where the losing the weapons added that fear factor, especially in the beginning. Because in the beginning, you were just kind of like, I don't know where the next weapon is. So, like, I was picking up everything, sticks and rusty swords and all that. Like, okay, and I get, like, 3 cracks on something, and it would break, and I'm like, where's the next weapon at? Where are we gonna get this? He like panicked. But the one thing I like, and to give him credit, why Bill wanted the weapons was he said because with the weapons breaking, it forced you to use weapons you never would have used. Who would have used a spear? Who would have used the double-handed swords and stuff like that? Like, you wouldn't have. You would have stuck to, a sword and a shield, because that's the optimal way to fight something, and it just would have been the way it was. And I get what he's saying. I'm totally, like I said, after he explained it, it made a lot more sense. There's just a few tweaks I would make to what he's saying, and that's, I think that's how everybody feels ultimately. But I mean, it was the number one complaint. There were so many people that like that turned them off of the game, and I don't think a single person was turned off the fact that they broke. It was how quickly they broke, and
Yeah.
that was the biggest issue.
100%. That's everybody that I talked to personally that had issues with the game. That was always the thing that they brought up.
Yeah.
And maybe you still have some weapons that break. Like at the start of the game, you pick up a stick. Well, that's going to shatter, like you said.
Of course.
But once you get your iron sword, once you get your battle axe, once you get your whatever pole arm you're going to unlock, and you like those don't break, but maybe they do less damage when they start wearing down.
Exactly.
So you have to go to a smith, or you learn the ability to then smith them yourself and fix those things.
Exactly.
That would be great, and it would get some of that, some of what they were going for by having your weapons break, and you're like, oh crap, okay, what am I going to do? You'd still have that kind of experience, but it wouldn't be like going through 50 swords in a boss battle and then be like, okay, well, I have nothing but my Sheikah Slate bombs now. All right, let's go have some fun. That wouldn't happen, which was never fun. I mean, when you beat the boss, it's like, yeah, I did that. Now I have to go find all my stuff again. That was something. But if they could get rid of a lot of that or almost all of it, I would be a much happier player of Breath of the Wild 2.
I agree. Okay, your fifth and final thing. What do you got for us?
All right. Well, it was such a small part of Breath of the Wild 1, but it was stupid, but I had so much fun with it. And that was the from the ground up side quest where you had to collect a bunch of things and you had to build that little village. And it's like, okay, get me 50 things of sticks, and you go get them 50 things of sticks and you build a place. And it was pretty much useless by the end of it. You could repair things, you could buy things. So it was useful, but I'd love to see more city building elements in this game, because Breath of the Wild itself is so open, so vast, but it's so empty, and there's ruins everywhere. So maybe part of this game is bringing back Hyrule by building these villages, repairing all of these fallen structures, and using items that you're finding in the environment, breaking down weapons, breaking down other things to get the raw components, and then rebuilding this stuff. Because as stupid as the quest was, it was kind of nice to come by that area later and it's like, oh yeah, I did this. It was empty and it was useless before, and now there's people walking around. It was kind of a really cool thing from a Zelda game player standpoint.
It was different, and I'm assuming you mean Terrytown, right?
Yeah, Terrytown stuff. Yeah,
that stuff to me was the thing that bothered me the most about Terrytown was I didn't realize it until I had 3 of the divine beasts taken down, and then I was like, oh wow, this is pretty awesome. Like, I could do this, and I had to go back to areas that I had already beaten. To bring them to get them people over, like the Goron and all that stuff, to get them over to where they needed to be. But it was so worth it when it happened. Like, it was such a cool little, just a safe haven, I guess, for lack of a better term. Like, it was just a nice place you could go where you didn't worry about something coming in, a creature coming in and attacking. And it was just like, you could go, you could shop, you could buy stuff and just hang out. Like, I liked it a lot. It was a lot of fun. I too would like more of that. There was trying to think. I think episode 3 of this series, Donnie Reese, he talked about how to do something similar, but it was the rebuilding of the Hyrule Castle. So you're going off, you're getting people, they're coming back, they're helping to build Hyrule. Because I think that's what a lot of people expected when you beat Breath of the Wild, was to like, hey, I'm going to now have an end game where I'm like rebuilding. And that would have been ultimately amazing. Even if, let's be honest, even if Nintendo would have come back and been like, hey, this is DLC. Like,
I was convinced it was going to be one of the DLCs. I was like, I'm all up, sign me up. And then it turned out to not be the case, which was a little bit sad. But yeah, no, I agree there. The fact that you beat the end boss and you're all happy, and then it just rewinds to right before the battle. It's like, I wanted to see a nice looking castle. I wanted to go explore that thing without being attacked by lasers and bombs.
But be honest, you liked going through that castle, like when you're like going down underground and like you kill everything out. It's like you can actually go through, and there's diaries and journals, and it's just like, oh my god, this is so amazing.
It was great.
It was great. It was great. Okay.
Until Blood Moon comes out halfway through, and then you're like, oh,
that's
now
like, okay,
I'm in trouble.
We're going to have to clear this out again. Here we go. Okay, so now that your 5 things are done, I got a couple questions I want to throw at you, because I've been
Sure.
asking people this, and I kind of want to get a feel for what everybody thinks. When does this game launch for you? When do you think it launches?
Well, I'm going to go with my heart, and my heart says holiday next year. So holiday 2020.
Okay.
And the realist in me says, no way is it going to be holiday 2020. It's going to be earliest 2021. I think that this game has been in development for a while, or at least pre-production or planning of it's been there for a while.
Yeah.
And if it's being built off the Breath of the Wild engine, which it is, and if it's being built with the assets, which it is, they have a head start there. They don't have to have 300 people working on environment to do the base of Hyrule. They can start chopping things out and making floating islands and all the cool stuff that we just talked about. But that process is going to be a lot less of time, because they're not going to be doing anything that they're going to end up scrapping. It's all, okay, we have a plan. Let's do this. Let's make this floating island. Let's make this underground base, and let's change Hyrule in this area. So to do that, to do it in a chunk of time and get it out there by holiday of next year. I mean, they've probably been working on it for a year already. So 3 years for a game that's built on top of another game maybe isn't asking too much. But the realist in me thinks it's probably going to be holiday 2021.
I mean, it's so difficult to gauge. And I mean, as much as I would love it to be there 2020 at the holiday, I'm almost willing to say, like, even if this game takes 10 years, I'm willing to wait. I don't want to, don't get me wrong, but I just want this game to be the sequel that Breath of the Wild deserves.
Right.
Like, Breath of the Wild, to me, was way up there in terms of Zelda games. It's not my number one Zelda game by any stretch of imagination. It's definitely, it moved up to number 2. But, like, for me, it's like, I want them to take the few things that were missing or wrong with Breath of the Wild and just tweak them and fix them. Like, I think you hit on a lot of them. And that's the dungeons, the breaking of the weapons, that type of stuff. I think if they just tweak that stuff, it can make this game just fantastic. And for me, I think it's probably going to hit like March 2021. I think that's probably a right time for it, but I'm also, like you said, I'm also a realist here, where I'm just like, it could fall to holiday 2021. It's crazy. It's crazy to think that, man, but we have to remember that, like, what was it? 1 year between Ocarina and Majora's Mask. So it is possible, but we just don't know the detail. And part of me feels like if they don't improve upon this game, it'll be such a letdown, because I don't want something rushed out just because we want to get it out there. You want it to be like a contender for Game of the Year again,
Exactly.
And I think it's one of those things that, like, just because it has the title Breath of the Wild 2, it automatically gets a target on its back. And people are going to be more critical of it because they kind of already played the first one. And if they don't make drastic changes, it starts to fall in people's minds. And I don't want that. I want it to be just as good, so much better than what we played in Breath of the Wild. So if that calls for a delay, then take the delay. I could care. I mean, I think a lot of people would feel that way, but who knows?
Well, what if this is Breath of the Wild sold millions of Switches? It was the game that sold Switches. What if Breath of the Wild 2 is what sells Switch 2s or Switch Pros or Switch upgrades? And that new like faster Switch that they've been talking about forever, that's been rumored forever. What if that is the game that sells this, that says you can play it on your Switch, but if you play it on this, look what it looks like. It's 1080p in handheld and blah blah, whatever the specs are. They could do that, and then you have to think, well, when do we think this system's going to come out? It's been a couple years already, so maybe another year and a bit, and that'll be kind of the middle of what they expect the lifespan for the Nintendo Switch. So then maybe a holiday 2020 makes sense, or maybe a spring 2021 makes sense.
Because you're thinking, if we think in theory, right? I mean, Nintendo's not going to jump into an arms race with Xbox and
No.
PlayStation by any stretch of imagination. Like, they are going to avoid that like the plague. So if that's the case, and they want to stay relevant against what Xbox and Sony are about to bring out, they need to do something. And, like, dude, if you were to give me a Switch 2.0 or a Switch Pro or whatever you want to call this thing, that's meatier, faster, more powerful, looks prettier, and all that stuff. And, by the way, here's Breath of the Wild 2 along with it. I think it does two things. One, gets people excited because they have a new game to play with their new hardware. Two, it makes developers happy because they go, okay, we don't have to try to move and port games over to this thing when we're making games for the Scarlet and PlayStation 5. It closes the gap a little bit there because I think that becomes the tale. Nintendo is in a position where they haven't been for a very long time, where third parties are just throwing games at them.
Definitely.
They need to keep that narrative and that story going, and I think, man, 2020 just make. But I also think that Sony's going to pull a Nintendo and try to launch in the spring.
Yeah.
So it's very possible where Nintendo and Sony are launching their game in 2021 in March.
Right.
I mean, if Nintendo wants to, they say all the time that they're not competing against them, but let's be honest, if they could steal a couple sales from Sony, they'd be more than happy to do that.
100%. Yeah.
So it's interesting. That's definitely an interesting tale that you spin there. Okay, so the next thing that I have is when you watch the trailer, are you one of those people that feels like that is Ganondorf, or do you feel like what we're seeing really isn't what we're seeing?
I don't know. It's a really good question. I everything that Nintendo does now, I expect to swerve. I never did. For the longest time, I thought Nintendo, they're smiley and they're happy and they have candy for you and they're telling you the truth to your face. But the last couple E3 directs, they've been pulling the wool over your eyes and doing a swerve right near the end. Yeah. But I don't know. You look at the runes that people have decoded that are in that magic that's swirling. It's they're Gerudo runes. There's Gerudo etching. The dead body, whatever it is, the zombie looking thing, it has jewelry that looks Gerudo. I do think it's Ganondorf, and maybe that is what's happening. Like the big what if for me is, what if you defeating Calamity Ganon actually releases the real Ganondorf? You destroyed Calamity Ganon, and now that hand can no longer hold that beast that was there, and that's when you come down, you see that magical energy holding down Ganondorf's corpse. The lights come on, whatever, the eyes light up, the hand blows away, you absorb it, and then next thing you know, you have Ganondorf sitting in front of you and takes off. So you actually destroyed the world by trying to save the world, and maybe they misinterpreted they misinterpreted all the writings that they found, right? And that could be the big story. And if that's it, I'll love it, because I'm a big Zelda nerd, and having you be the cause of Ganondorf rising, instead of you being the person that wakes up because Ganondorf rose, would be a fantastic way to start this story off.
Oh my god, that's first time I heard that theory, and I love it. I love that. But you were the perfect guest. That just that got me hyped. I liked it, because I've been on record saying, like, I don't know that what we're seeing is legit. We like you said, Nintendo likes to swerve, and like I remember watching the original Breath of the Wild trailer the night that they announced the Switch.
Yeah.
And what I thought that game was nothing what that game was after because you watch that trailer and you really truly believe that this is a voice-driven, heavily narrative game. Zelda's there. Things are happening. She makes decisions that destroy the world and all this stuff. That's not even close to the case of that game. And then, so part of me thinks that, like, they're leading us down this path of what we think this game is, And like, how do we know that what's happening in that trailer isn't just a dream?
Exactly.
Like, it's just Zelda having premonitions.
Mm-hmm.
And this is because she does it all the time. That's her thing. Like, she has premonitions all the time. Man, it would be crazy. It'd be crazy. If so, in your mind, Ganondorf is the villain in this game. This is the.
I think so. Yeah. Like, I think, like, you look at the not hieroglyphics, the kind of wall etchings and everything around, and it very much has that style of what Ganondorf looks like.
Yes.
Like, it has that look.
Yeah.
So and when I don't like, I take with what people say where this game falls in the timeline with a bit of a grain of salt, but it does feel like this is kind of telling the story of kind of the first appearance of Ganondorf in the world. But then you fought this big swirling like bull running around, and it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe that's not it. Okay, that's what it is.
Yeah.
But maybe the true story really is that that was just his evil leaking out and becoming alive and trying to take over the world. But by defeating that, you weakened the thing that was holding it down, and then the true Ganondorf comes out, and that is what has set up all of the other Zeldas that you've woken up as the hero to come save the world. In
your mind, are we collecting Triforce pieces in this game at all, or no?
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't think so. I want to think that you're collecting collecting runes. You're collecting something that is going to power up your third of the Triforce. So whatever that hand is your third of the Triforce. This will be Link getting his Triforce powers for the first time, and then you're strengthening them by collecting runes or power from different shrines or different dungeons or whatever however they do it in the game.
Yeah.
You're actually going to be powering yourself up, and powering up that third of the Triforce. And
last thing before we go here,
sure,
how much, like, when you watch this trailer, how we mentioned it in when we just talked before, but like, I just want to kind of reiterate for those that didn't hear that episode. But like, how much of a vibe of Twilight Princess do you pull from this trailer, and do you think it's implemented into this game at all?
I don't really know. Like, there is definitely the vibe there. Like, it's a spoopy kind of trailer. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit spooky, a little bit dark, little bit creepy. Definitely not a vibe that you get from Zelda very often. Mm-hmm. I think it is going to go a little bit darker. It's going to go a little bit to different realms. Yeah. So maybe we'll get some of that Twilight Princess, some of that kind of darkness and some of that kind of dark magic sort of vibe coming into this game. I don't know. I don't want to think about it too much, because I want to wake up one day and I can play the game, and I want to play the story out myself. But it's such a storied franchise that has gone in so many different directions. So it makes me wonder if they're going to retread or if they really are going to go out into something new that they've never done before.
Interesting. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun.
Definitely.
Lloyd, thank you so much for doing this, man. This was a blast, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me on, man. It's been a heck of a lot of fun.
Real quickly, before we go, again, just to let everybody know where they can find you and follow you and all that stuff.
Sure, yeah. On Twitter, you can check me out at Dasme, D-A-S-M-E, or check out Nintendo Pulse, where I talk about all things Nintendo every week, or a couple times a week, actually. So, yeah, would love to chat with each and every one of you fine folks.
Thanks. For me, you can follow me Instagram, Twitter, at Nintendo Gurus. Also, check out NintendoGuru.com. That is all. Peace out, Preston.